Hello, welcome to
Monday with the Mavens.
Today we are talking all about metabolic adaptation versus metabolic
Activation.
And look out. Oh man, there's some goodness, and we would love for you guys to get involved in the conversation. So if something doesn't make sense, or if you have questions, or even if it's non-related during this time, just feel free to put it in the comment section, and we will be paying attention, and we'd love to have you join in on the conversation.
I'm going to try to keep my head right about there to block the angels.
I like the
heaven outside.
Yeah. Man, we live in Southern Oregon. We know a lot of you guys are not from this area, but it went from like summer to winter overnight. She has snow at her house.
Yeah. And it was snowing all morning. But that's what I love. I love the winter.
Yeah, I love it all. I'm
I
so
do
thankful
too.
that we have all 4 seasons here.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, guys, so let's just jump in. I know we talk a lot about metabolism, but the thing is that there's so much noise and information out there, and we really want to just try to break it down, because we so often have clients that come in that are consistently under eating. Not always, but we get the question all the time: how can I eat more and shift my body composition? And there is a science behind it that we really want to go through kind of step by step, and actually share some research with you guys, and answer some common questions along the way, and then give you some tangible tools that you can take home and apply. So let's jump in.
Let's do it. So metabolism, just for sake of conversation, is your body's ability to take in food and drink and convert it to energy. Like, that's really what it is on all levels. It is turning a fuel into energy. And everybody has a metabolism. If you are a living, breathing entity, you have a metabolism. And I think that we'll dispel a little bit here as far as like some language goes. A lot of times when we talk about reverse dieting, macronutrients, those types of things, we talk about broken metabolism. Well, there's no such thing as a broken metabolism. If you have a metabolism, you are alive and breathing, it is working. It is not broken. However, we can manipulate things and shift things to help make it more efficient, to help it work better for you, and to just kind of work for you instead of feeling like it's working against you sometimes. But just so you know, nobody has a broken metabolism. We are going to dispel that. And there are some things that we can do to help your metabolism work more efficiently.
And basically, like, what we're going to get down to the bottom of today is how can we do things that have an impact on our base metabolic rate, or our resting metabolic rate. In other words, when you are no movement, just your sedentary and or sleeping self, how many calories you burn. Because there are so many things that impact our ability to increase our base metabolic rate, which has a profound impact on our body's ability to use the fuel we give it, exactly for that, to fuel our bodies, to fuel our brains, and to not necessarily store it as fat. Also, we talk about this all the time, but our bodies are so incredibly sophisticated, and it all works together, right? And so we talk about things like the gut-brain connection. We talk about cognition. We talk about our nervous system. We talk about our endocrine system being our hormones, our digestion. It's all related. And what we're going to talk about in terms of metabolic adaptation versus metabolic adaptation.
Nope, restoration.
Activation. Adaptation versus activation has so much to do with what's going on in our bodies hormonally, which has a lot to do with what we're feeding ourselves, and if we're restricting ourselves for a long period of time. So let's just first jump in. Actually, before we do, if you guys are just joining us, please feel free to join the conversation. We say this all the time, but we are looking back and forth between Facebook and Instagram. I was going to say YouTube, which this will be on YouTube as well, but we'd love your guys' questions. Oftentimes they come in after the fact, and we love that too, but please always reach out either here or privately via DMs, or you can go to our website, macromavens.life. You can reach out to us there. We love getting to talk to you guys, and answering questions. And if you find research or anything that you think it would be good for us to see, we love that too. So
Yeah.
we are like constant diggers of information and current research, and it's changing all the time.
Yep, totally. So when we talk about metabolism and we talk about your base metabolic rate, we talk about resting metabolic rate, like Emmy said, our bodies, if you are a living, breathing person, is taking in energy or taking in fuel, converting that to energy. It takes a lot of energy to digest your food. It takes a lot of energy for your heart to beat, for your brain to continue to function, to pump blood throughout your body. Like all of those things that your body is doing without us telling it to do it, all of those things take energy, and they get that energy from the food and the drinks that we give it, converts it to metabolism, or our metabolism converts it to energy. And so if you think that like just by sitting here doing nothing that your metabolism isn't working, well, you're wrong. Our metabolism works when we're sleeping. It works when we're awake. It works more so when we're up and moving around, but our body is so sophisticated and so smart that the less fuel, just like a car, the less fuel that you give your body, the less efficient your metabolism is going to work. And if you do that over time, consistently for a long stretch of time, your body's going to be like, oh, well, this is just normal. I just only get this amount of fuel every day. And so this is the amount of energy that I have to produce. And so oftentimes if you see, or maybe you are somebody, we see this all the time. We'll have a client come in who has been under eating for a long period of time, maybe their whole life.
And or maybe binge eating or having disordered eating, because binge is a strong word, but people who will restrict calories, but then they'll have a big binge and their body doesn't know what to do with that.
And so no, that's great. And so what happens is all of our metabolic functions slow down. So somebody who eats, I feel like you're really looking at me.
I'm into it.
So somebody who's been significantly under eating for a long period of time, like their metabolism has slowed down, which is a form of survival for our bodies, right? If we don't give it enough energy to do the things it needs to do the most efficient manner, it's going to slow those things down. So our digestion will slow down, our circulation will slow down, our like non-exercise movement will slow down. So like I'm a fidgeter. Like I fidget. If I cross my leg, I'm a bouncer. Like I bounce my knee all the time. If I'm taking myself through a temporary calorie deficit, all of those things slow down. I may or may not even realize it, but I'll stop fidgeting. Maybe I feel a little like a brain foggy because my brain isn't functioning at the level that it normally does. All of that is because of the lack of fuel I'm giving my body, is causing my metabolism to not push out the amount of energy that I want or that I need, but it's just enough to keep my body systems going. And so when we have a client who's been significantly under eating for a very long period of time, we see this. And so there's a remedy for it, and we'll talk about metabolic activation and how we can kick our metabolism into gear, because it's not broken. It just needs to be retrained. And that's something that we can all do, but it's really exciting. I love it when I have a client who's like, I just don't ever have energy. I don't eat very much, or maybe they feel like they're eating plenty of food, but they just don't have energy. And oftentimes that's like a signal number one to me, like, oh man, let's look at how much food they're eating on a day-to-day basis. And most likely, not always, but most likely they're just not fueling themselves properly in order to get the metabolic activation that they want.
And you also can't go from 0 to 60 overnight. And we're going to talk about that because it's really important to have a slow roll so that your metabolism, which is sophisticated, understands what's coming and going. But with metabolic adaptation, virtually what happens is over a period of time, and we're going to get into some actual research here in a minute, but over a period of time, if you are operating in a deficit for too long, and what too long means a little something different for each person. Everybody's body is different. Your body size is different. Your requirements are different. Your activity levels are different. But if you underfuel it for too long, your organs and your systems, your body systems, start to slowly decrease or start to shut down a little bit, because our bodies are going into what they think is a famine. And so then what happens is our base metabolic rate starts to decrease a little bit, meaning we burn less calories at rest. So now you're here. And most people, when they start a deficit, they are going to have weight loss, fat loss, probably some muscle loss if they're not doing it right out of the gate. But your body won't sustain that, because what happens is you had this higher caloric intake and you had this metabolism, and then you decreased your caloric intake and you had a metabolism that was revving, but it starts decreasing in terms of your calories that are burning at rest until it meets that. Now here you are, and unfortunately you hit a plateau, and the only thing that you can then do to continue to shed fat and or to lose weight, which there's so many things that go into that, is to decrease even further. And you can't continue to do that, or your body and your brain will not work for you. And so when you can strategically start to fuel your body, it has a huge impact on your hormones, among all of your bodily systems. And then you start to have more of that NEAT, that, that
non-exercise, excuse me,
activity thermogenesis.
Sorry.
Which are like, you start to fidget more, you start to talk more, you start to move more. It impacts your leptin and your ghrelin, which we're going to go into.
We're going to talk about those.
And your brain starts working better for you. You start having more energy, which then allows you to do more things that are going to burn more calories. You oftentimes get deeper sleep, which has a huge impact on your metabolism and your ability to shed fat, because you need that deep restorative sleep in order to really have your cells cleaned out at night. And you're going to have an improved mood, like all the things. And we even had a client this morning in our client-only Zoom that was mentioning she's on her reverse, which we're going to talk about. And she said, like, around week 5, she started to kind of get a little...
antsy.
Yeah, antsy, just because she was eating more and more calories, and she's like, oh, I'm anxious for my cut, because there is a time and a place for a short-term deficit if used responsibly. And then she's like, but then I kept climbing and I just started feeling so good, like in terms of her energy and her sleep and her workouts. And she's like, I kind of just want to stay here. Because she had success, and she might still go into a short-term deficit, but it is like, you don't realize what you're missing out on until you start feeling really good. Like, there's no reason to hit a sluggish spot in mid-afternoon. There's no reason to have your energy tanked after a meal. There's no reason you can't wake up feeling refreshed and energized. There's no reason that you should experience brain fog throughout the day. Like, those things can be prevented. So let's talk about some research.
Yeah, so let's talk about what happens when we go into metabolic adaptation. Now, sometimes that sounds like a 4-letter word, but it's really our body's natural response for what we're doing. Typically, we are putting our bodies in a calorie deficit, which will give you results. If you are burning more calories than you are giving your body, you most likely will be losing weight. Now, when we say losing weight, we're not necessarily just meaning losing fat. Oftentimes, our clients come to us saying, I want to lose weight, when technically they don't necessarily want to just lose weight. They just want to really focus on losing fat. When we say losing weight, it kind of takes in everything into account, like water. Like, a lot of people will drop weight right away because they are dropping water weight, or maybe you are doing, maybe you're in a calorie deficit that is unhealthy and you are losing muscle, which we don't want. We don't want that. We really want to maintain muscle. We don't want to lose brain matter. We don't want to lose any of that. Like, we want to maintain as much of our body integrity as we can and shed fat. And so that's really what we are talking about. But let's get back into metabolic adaptation. When we are in a calorie deficit for a long period of time, and our metabolism adapts to that low calorie. So Emmy had mentioned it earlier. It's like, let's say you're eating this many calories very consistently, you're in a cut, your metabolism is burning here, you're in a cut, and it slowly starts adapting. Pretty soon you're balanced out again. Let's say you're eating 1,500 calories and you're burning 1,500 calories. Like, again, if you're wanting to lose more weight, you're going to have to reduce your calories even more because your metabolism has adapted. That's what our bodies were designed to do. It's beautiful and it's amazing. Now, what ends up happening, let's talk about what happens when we are in a metabolically adapted state. Like, all sorts of things chemically happen. Our endocrine system, I don't want to say it kicks into overdrive, because it actually doesn't. It slows down. And so we get these different hormones that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about leptin, we're going to talk about ghrelin, we're going to talk about cortisol, and what happens with those.
And testosterone.
And testosterone. Those 4 hormones. What happens to those when we are in a reduced calorie state? And it's going to make you think, like, I probably don't want to stay in a reduced calorie state for very long, simply because of what happens to our hormones.
Okay, I'm going to start with this one because I think it's really powerful. And when we talk about these things, because there's so much information, there's so much noise out there, but you need to do your own research. You need to look at the research, and research is always changing, right? Some of these studies are not huge, and I think that that's something to make sure that you pay attention to, especially if you're familiar with how research studies work. But this one in particular, it was done by the Department of Nutrition Sciences. It was 65 premenopausal women. So this one's not specific to men, it's just specific to women. We are going to get into some stuff for men too. All of these participants had normal glucose levels going into that, and I think that's a really important point. Yeah. So these are not going to be pre-diabetic or diabetic patients. And they all also had at least one direct relative that has some form of metabolic disease and or are obese. Also, none of these participants were taking any type of medication that could interfere with their ability to shift body composition or have an impact on weight loss.
And they all had weight to lose.
So these participants were put into a study where they were restricted down to 800 calories. Now, 800 calories is not very much at all. And if you are operating at that minimal of a calorie count, which we have a lot of clients that come to us that are eating that little.
Go to macromavens.life, click the hop aboard button, and we would love to chat with you.
We would. And so after they were able to sustain about a 16% weight loss, not fat loss, but weight loss, what the results started showing is they then started to have a reduced BMR, base metabolic rate, meaning they were burning less calories at rest. So their weight loss started slowing down. It's going to slow down anyways because they're going to be smaller, right? Mm-hmm. But what's such a kicker...
Well, wait, let's talk about that for just a second. So we get this a lot. Let's say somebody comes in and they have a significant amount of fat to lose. And we have tons of clients who have lost 50, 60, 70 pounds.
100
plus pounds, a lot of fat. That person's base metabolic rate will go down because you are a smaller person. My base metabolic rate is less than somebody who weighs 180 pounds. I am a smaller person. It doesn't take that much energy for me to survive is basically what it means. So just like, a baby, a very small person takes much less energy than somebody who weighs 200 pounds. It's just the nature of how it is. A smaller person requires less energy than a larger person.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so what happens is that, or what happened in this particular study is that after roughly on average 16% of their weight loss occurred, then their resting metabolic rate or their base metabolic rate adjusted to the calories they were consuming. So they could no longer lose weight at that 800 calories, you guys. It's so little. Because their metabolism adapted down to that. And that was in roughly a 6-month period of time.
I wonder if that's going to make our audio go off on Instagram.
For those of you guys that are listening on Instagram, can you let us know if you can still hear us? I just had a call come in, and sometimes that messes things up.
We should turn off your calls.
Mm-hmm. We should.
When we're on here.
So let us know if you're able to still hear us, please. Because this is real important. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So, and then in addition to that, what happens is they were monitoring leptin levels and ghrelin levels. So your leptin is produced and excreted by fat cells in your body. And it decreases with reduced calories. Now here's the kicker. When your leptin levels fall, your appetite increases and your calorie burning is reduced. So your ability to burn calories at rest goes down, but your appetite goes up. And here's the thing. In a 6-month study, and this is a different study, it showed that, the study showed that calorie decreased leptin levels by 44% 6 months in. So imagine that. So John, thank you so much for letting us know sound is good on Facebook. Instagram's the issue, I think. And so if any of you guys are on Instagram and you can't hear us.
Jamie Fridley, can you hear us? Just give us the thumbs up if you can. Yeah. Hopefully you can.
Yeah.
If not, so sorry.
Okay, so what that's basically saying is that in a deficit over a 6-month period of time, the leptin levels went down on average 44%. So that's
significant.
spiking in appetite,
Yeah.
and decreasing your ability to burn calories at rest. So now we have all these things working against us, right? Like you're in a deficit, your organs, your bodily systems start shutting down. Your ability to burn calories at rest starts decreasing to match what you're giving it over a period of time. Now it's starting to have an impact on all of your systems. We're focusing on hormones specifically, your circulating hormones, with leptin being a huge one because it has a direct impact.
No sound on Instagram. Why don't you restart it on Instagram?
So bummed about that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Hold tight, Instagram. Just a minute. And then just put that in the archive. Sorry, Facebook. We're having some technical issues. Every time we get a phone call when we are on Instagram, we lose our audio.
Go ahead and keep talking.
Well, I'm totally distracted now. Okay, so one other thing that happens with metabolic adaptation is, besides leptin, is the ghrelin. So ghrelin is another hormone in our body. And when we have ghrelin is what makes us hungry. So when you go an extended amount of time without eating, our body produces ghrelin, which triggers our brain to get hungry. So you get all of these digestive things happening in your stomach starts growling. All of the things that we associate with being hungry are all triggered by ghrelin. When we reduce our calories over time, and Emmy has all of the data and the studies and all of that, I'll just summarize for you what a lot of these studies were showing is when you reduce your calories significantly and you stay at a low calorie level over time, your ghrelin levels go up. So not only are you already calorie reduced, but you are feeling hungry, obviously, right? And so then what ends up happening is it triggers a whole system. Sorry, my phone is... It triggers a whole system of all of your bodily systems that start reacting to these hormone imbalances. And so we really want to keep our hormones as balanced as possible because that in turn is going to help us, for one, feel our best. So with calorie reduction and being in a deficit for a long time, not only do we mess with our levels of ghrelin and leptin, cortisol, testosterone, all of those numbers get skewed and go down. So your testosterone with lower calories, your testosterone levels go down significantly. And then also what we don't want to happen is we don't want it to be sustained over time at that low level. I'm like so distracted, you guys. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I have to get this one up so that I can then start the second one. Otherwise we'll lose it.
So anyway, when you're in a calorie deficit for an extended amount of time and you're messing with your leptin, your ghrelin, also your cortisol. So we talk about cortisol a lot, right? Cortisol is our stress hormone. We want it to be higher in the morning and then to go down throughout the day. Like that is a normal cortisol rhythm. High in the morning and slowly reducing itself at night so that then you can go to bed and have a restful night's sleep. When we are jolted awake in the middle of the night by a loud sound, it shoots our cortisol levels through the roof and we may have a hard time going to sleep after that. So what happens with cortisol when you are in a calorie deficit for a long time, cortisol has been shown to induce muscle protein breakdown. So not only are we messing with leptin, ghrelin, testosterone, and cortisol, but the cortisol, when it is at an increased level for a long amount of time, it starts to deteriorate our muscle protein. And so it's kind of going against everything. If you're trying to build muscle and you are super stressed out and you're low calorie and your cortisol is through the roof, then you're also like, you're kind of fighting against yourself. You know what I mean? Okay, we're coming back online on Instagram.
Hey guys, I am so sorry I got a phone call and I need to figure that out. It then took the sound away. So we're coming back on and we're just continuing the conversation.
Yep. So we're going to rewind a little bit. And Emmy was talking about, I think you were talking about leptin.
Yeah. So when we were going into that, we were talking about a study, and I'm just going to summarize it again really quick because I think it's really important. And that is that we looked at two different studies, and there's definitely more out there, but basically it showed that over a sustained period of reduced calories, the base metabolic rate or the resting metabolic rate, in other words, the number of calories your body burns at rest, starts to go down. In addition to that, what's going to happen in this one study that I think is really important for us to know, it was a 6-month study that showed that decreasing calories after 6 months decreased your leptin levels by 44% on average. Now, leptin, and I apologize if this is a repeat because I don't know exactly where we left off when we lost sound over here, but leptin it's really important. It's produced and excreted by our fat cells, and when leptin falls, when your leptin levels go down, your appetite increases and your ability to burn calories at rest decrease. And so when you're in a deficit for too long and you're not strategic about how you use that deficit, or you don't start at a higher caloric intake and then you're there for too long, what ends up happening is that you have a profound impact on all your bodily systems. Your organs start shutting down. Your body doesn't have as much energy. You're not going to have as much energy for your cognition. Your digestion starts slowing down. And then things like leptin, ghrelin, cortisol, testosterone, they're all affected, and they're working against you to actually burn calories effectively.
Because they're trying to keep you alive, right? And so it's this, we talk about our bodily systems being married. Like it's this interwoven, amazing design, and it's designed to do what it does. Like you're not broken. Like that's how our bodies were designed. And so we need to take into consideration, like if our bodies were designed to do this at a deep calorie deficit, like how much better will we feel and will our bodies respond if we give it the fuel that it wants and needs?
Absolutely. And I think, so we've talked about metabolic adaptation up until this point, right? So we've talked about why it's dangerous to operate at too low of a calorie count for too long. 1, it's not sustainable. 2, you're damaging your body and your brain and your endocrine system over time, really all of your bodily systems.
So let's talk about that for just a hot second. So your testosterone goes down significantly when you are under fueling yourself. And one thing, and this is really pretty specific for women, one thing that happens to women when our testosterone levels go down is our libido tanks. And that is no fun for anybody if you are in a relationship and intimacy is important to you, because if you have a very low calorie intake and your testosterone is really low and you're not feeling, like the hot, spicy urge to be intimate with your partner, well, that will affect your relationship. And so we hear it all the time. In fact, I think I wrote a post on it the other day. One of the non-scale victories that our clients are so excited about all the time when we get them, when we get their base metabolic rate higher and we get them eating more and they're fueling their bodies, is they all of a sudden have a libido that they haven't felt for many years. In fact, one of our clients wrote to one of the coaches about how all of a sudden I feel like a teenage boy. It's amazing. And that's a good thing.
Not to mention just being more comfortable in your own skin when you're feeling good. It's important. It's important for relationships.
Yeah. And so not only is it the unseen things that are damaging our body, like our leptin, our ghrelin, our cortisol, testosterone, we can't see those things. Yeah. But when we get them in balance and we get things working the way they should, then some of those non-scale victories actually show themselves. Okay, if my libido is coming back and I'm feeling like I want to be intimate with my partner, then, most likely your testosterone levels are probably increasing. And we see it time and time and time again with our clients, especially those who do hormone testing before they start our program and then, a few months into the program.
It's pretty remarkable. And we want to move on to metabolic activation.
What can you do about it?
Yeah, but I just want to talk about a couple of things really quick. And Haley might have fully discussed this when I was working on things.
I feel like I was really distracted. And so I was half saying things that were important and half I wonder what she's doing.
I know.
How's it going over there?
I know. Huh? The other thing is cortisol, because we've talked about cortisol a lot in the past. In fact, we have an entire live, probably multiple lives on it. But when we're stressing our body too much for too long, and that can be all sorts of different stressors, one of them being in a caloric deficit for too long. Once again, there's a time and a place for a deficit. Then that has an impact on things like cortisol. And then when our cortisol rhythms are out of whack, that has a huge impact on sleep. So if you're waking up in the middle of the night with a racing brain, your cortisol is probably spiking in the middle of the night. So we want it highest in the morning and we want it to reduce throughout the day. And so then what happens is you're not getting as much deep sleep. And if you're not getting enough deep sleep, REM sleep's also important, then your cells are not cleaning themselves out and you're not having the detoxification process that your body needs to have a well-activated metabolism. So here's this whole picture where you put yourself in a deficit, you end up staying there for too long, your base metabolic rate ends up decreasing to match your load over time, so you're no longer making progress. The only thing that now you think you're going to do is have to decrease further to make more progress. Your leptin levels start tanking, which means your appetite's going to go up and your calories burned at rest are going to go down. You start having an impact on things like all of your sex hormones. So things like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, they're all impacted. Your digestion is impacted. Your cortisol is impacted, which also is going to affect your ability to shed fat and to get deep sleep.
And what Emmy didn't mention, and I mentioned it on Facebook, but I don't think Instagram was back up, but when we have elevated levels of cortisol for a significant amount of time, it induces muscle protein breakdown. And I mean, that's just it's like your body fighting against itself. It's breaking down the muscle that you already have because it is living in a high cortisol state. And we don't want that. So
we want muscle preservation. It's so important.
Oh my gosh.
So important. And so, okay, so we've talked a lot about metabolic adaptation. Basically, your base metabolic rate is decreasing when you underfeed it for too long. You burn less calories at rest over time, and then you have to start changing things to try to burn them again. So
Emmy,
yes.
How do we activate our metabolism?
There are so many ways. And so, first and foremost, I just want to mention this. And we've talked about this before. We actually have a whole live on it, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. But how you're feeding yourself is important. So we are going to talk about a slow increase in calories and why it's important that you do it slowly. But we're also going to talk a little bit about why the macro breakdown in how you do that is important. And it really depends on a person's goals. And that's why something like an online macro calculator that just gives you a one-time assignment, is not taking into account what are you currently eating? Like, what is your metabolism currently used to? How active are you? What does your bio-individuality look like? Like, what do you, all of those factors. It's just usually taking into account your height, your weight, your activity level, your age, your gender. And so, I mean, anything is better than nothing, right? But then if you're just stuck there, or if you've been under eating for far too long and you have an adapted metabolism of, let's say, only 1,000 calories, and it says that your macro calculation should be 1,600 calories and you go from 1,000 to 1,600 overnight, your body's not going to know what to do with that extra fuel, so it's going to store it as fat. And so what happens is several things. There's a lot of noise out there about reverse dieting. And what's so beautiful about how we like to, what we like to call a metabolic activation, is in slowly and strategically increasing your calories by anywhere from 85 to 150 calories week over week, and shifting your macros as we go. Not only does it help your metabolism to then match that as you go up so that you're not gaining weight, but oftentimes where some of the weight loss comes in, and this is the part that's hard for people to wrap their head around, is that the impact on your hormonal system, your hormone harmony, so things that we just talked about like leptin, ghrelin, testosterone, cortisol, there's such a positive impact on those things that not only does your base metabolic rate start increasing where you're burning more calories at rest, but your body's working better for you, so it knows what to do with that fuel, and it can tap into your fat storages, and you start having hormone harmony. Hormones have a huge impact on metabolism. Huge. Oh my gosh.
Huge impact.
Yeah.
Also, let's talk about sustainability. If somebody were to tell me okay, Haley, you need to eat 2,500 calories starting tomorrow. Well, for one, I would really have a hard time with that. And like being able to be adherent to it would be a real struggle. Yeah. So not only like is it better for our bodies, but it's better for our brains. The slow roll, like a lot of people, let's just be real. A lot of people are scared to increase calories. We live in a society where diet culture is the norm from a very young age. And so the thought of increasing calories is really scary to a lot of people. Yeah. And so if we're able to do that gently and in a very slow way, it's the body and the brain is better able to accept that. And then you don't get these giant shifts where if I'm eating like 1,500 calories today and 2,500 calories tomorrow, which feels like a binge for somebody my size, that also, like, for one, I will not feel good. If I jump 1,000 calories in a day, I will feel bloated, I will feel heavy, I will just not feel good. The slow roll allows us as your coach to be in communication with you and to be like, okay, how are you feeling, with these extra calories? And, are you feeling more energized or are you feeling sluggish? And we can make little tweaks here and there without it being a giant like scary shift. Yeah. And so it's good for our bodies and it's really good for our brains and our psyches because honestly, like we're fragile. Yeah. We're fragile little people out there. And so we really want to be gentle with you through this process. And a lot of people have a lot of trauma surrounding dieting and diet culture. And we don't want to add to that.
Not to mention that one of the things that I think is really important is how we shift those macros over time. And I'll just give you a real-time example. I did a new client's first assignment today. And it's really interesting because for her goals and for her starting point, in my opinion, she was significantly under eating protein and actually under eating fat. And so here's the thing. I know where I want to have her for her goals with muscle preservation and fat loss. I'd like to eventually get her to somewhere between 0.85 and 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight and then flux her fat and her carbs, right? But if I started her there today, it would be so hard on her stomach to increase her protein that amount. And so we just slightly increase her protein, offset the other, and then week over week, as we can slowly climb her calories, we're going to shift the amount of protein she's eating, we're going to shift the amount of carbs she's eating, and we're going to shift the amount of fat she's eating. Because here's the thing, they're all important. And we've talked about this a lot, but when we look at fats, good, healthy fats are so critical for hormone balance. They're so critical for hormone balance.
Critical.
That's more important for women than it is for men.
And critical means like you have to have them in order to stay alive. Like it's critical.
Yeah. And we're talking about, when I talk about healthy fats, I'm talking about things like nuts in moderation and avocados and olive oil and avocado oil and coconut oil and the fats that are going to really help fuel our brain and balance our hormones. Because once again, that hormonal infrastructure is so important. Hormone harmony. We see clients day over day go from a hormone hurricane to hormone harmony and their lives change. Like their lives absolutely change. Yeah. I have been there.
Yeah.
And so,
and sometimes it's not coupled. It's not always coupled with fat loss. No. Sometimes the hormone shift alone is really what people want and they don't even know it. Yep. I have a client who came in and had, her goal was to lose 18 pounds or 20 pounds or something. Yeah. And we were able to shift her. She went through the whole reverse process, whatever. And her hormones balanced out. She took labs beforehand. She took labs in the middle of the process and her hormones showed significant improvement. And she felt like $1 million. I never had to take her through a cut because she reached her goal in the reverse. She was feeling amazing. And it was just like one of those things where it was like, man, she just needed to get her nutrition under control. Nutrition is foundational to our health. I wish I could scream it from the rooftops for everyone to hear.
It is
the foundation.
It doesn't have to be too complicated. I do want to get back to the importance of fats, carbohydrates, and protein. So we will get there, but I just want to, Big John Eaton over here says, it's interesting to me how hormones and leptin and activity and BMR are all interconnected, which means that there's no silver bullet. Health and wellness is dynamic and multifaceted. Yes. It is, but it doesn't have to be too complicated.
Oh no, let's keep it simple.
Like really, like it doesn't have to be too complicated. And that's what we want to say. Like there's a good starting point for everybody. There's a path for everybody. And there are very simple things we can all do to get our metabolisms activated, to get our hormones in harmony, to increase our energy levels, to improve our sleep hygiene. Like, it doesn't have to be too complicated. It takes knowledge and it takes application. And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Because like, we want to scream it from the rooftops, because when our clients are literally changing their lives, it's the most satisfying thing in the whole wide world that we get to be a part of that. And it's like, we want everybody to have it.
I know. Sometimes our clients come to us and they're like, okay, these are my goals, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I want that more for you than you want it for yourself. Like, we just want you guys to feel good. And so we feel like we have been empowered with the tools. We want to give you those tools that you can apply to your daily lives and to do it. And so, you know, one of those tools is hiring a coach. Like, it's true. We all need coaches at some point in our lives.
In a lot of areas of life.
Yeah. And it's not just like, when my kids very first started playing sports, like I wasn't sending them out to the soccer field with the ball and saying, go have fun. Like, no, they joined a team. They had a coach who was teaching them the skills that they needed to be successful and to reach their goals, you know, and that's the same thing that we're doing here. It's just, it just looks different. So
it's huge. And okay, so back to that, we were talking about the importance of all 3 macronutrients. So we talked about fat, and it has a lot of functions, but a big one being for appropriately supporting your hormones and your ability to actually absorb your vitamins. It's huge. 2, carbohydrates, especially whole fruit with fiber and vegetables. Those types of carbohydrates are really going to be what's going to fuel your energy. Like, it's huge, especially when they're coupled with healthy fats and protein. And then protein, we say protein.
But wait. I thought carbohydrates cause me to gain, to put on fat.
No, not if you are appropriately utilizing them. And that's why we slow roll people, because we have so many people that come to us that are afraid of carbs or are afraid of fat or are significantly under eating their protein, and we can't take them there overnight. But if we can get them to start increasing their carbohydrates, preferably with clean fuels, not always, but it is amazing what starts to happen, because there's also a really big impact on things like your thyroid function. If you undereat carbohydrates for too long of a period of time, your thyroid starts to downregulate.
Yeah.
That's an entirely other subject that we're going to do a deep dive in sometime soon.
Yeah.
So that's fats, that's carbs, and then protein is queen.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of people, it takes some time to get them comfortable to increase their protein. But in order, especially if you're working out and you're doing any type of resistance training, which we should be, because even though our plan is like nutrition is number 1, you've got to dial it in before you do the other things. And a lot of people don't change their movement, and that's okay. But if you want muscle, which leads to longevity and leads to health, there's so much
increases your metabolic activity. Yeah. I mean, it really does. Like, there's not a ton of things in the world that'll actually increase your metabolic output, but putting on muscle does that.
It does. And so you burn more calories at rest when you have muscle. And if you want to see muscle, you have to have muscle. And if you want to have muscle, you have to do some form of resistance training. And if you also want to have muscle, you have to be getting enough amino acids in your protein to actually sustain the muscle you have. Otherwise, all of your efforts are also going to reduce your muscle mass, not just your fat mass. And so I know that we're putting a lot of words out there, but bottom line is, if you're in a deficit for too long, you gotta climb out of it, and you gotta climb out of it in a good way. You also need all 3 macronutrients, and you need to be strategic in terms of how you climb those, and not jump overnight. And then when we're talking about metabolic activation, there's so many things that we've talked about in terms of hydration and fiber and deep sleep and sunshine and movement and strong social connections.
Stress resilience. I mean, there's so many things, you guys.
There are, but the biggest thing is being strategic in how you slowly increase your calories over a period of time to get your metabolism right. We talked about if you're at a higher caloric intake and your body has adapted to that, and your metabolism is burning at the rate in which the calories you're taking in, right? Then you're not going to gain, you're not going to lose. But then you reduce your calories. Now you have this burning metabolism, and you reduce your calories, so you're going to have some weight loss, whether it be muscle, fat, water, whatever it is. then over time, you're eating this amount of calories, your metabolism is going to adapt down to it over time because that's what it's used to getting. So now you slowly start to increase those calories, shifting those macros for muscle preservation, hormone balance, energy. Your metabolism slowly starts to follow suit, right? And so then you get up here, and sometimes your metabolism actually starts working more than your calories. You're burning fat primarily because you're adhering to something. You're consistently fueling yourself, and your hormones are in check, which is allowing you to actually burn fat and preserve muscle. Now you have this high functioning metabolism. And then and only then, when you're at a higher caloric intake, should you consider a deficit. And should that be short term? Because now you have this high firing metabolism. You'd go into a deficit, your body's going to keep burning at this rate, and it's going to burn your fat, especially if you're still giving it enough protein to preserve your muscle. And now your fat loss is going to be much more aggressive, but then you can't stay here, or this comes back down here, right? So then you slow roll back to that. Now you have this high functioning metabolism, high caloric intake, lean body mass, flexibility, no restrictions, and you can sustain your results.
Yeah. And that's called maintenance, right? And our goal for all of our clients is to get you to maintenance. Yeah. And maintenance looks different for everybody. It is not like a static assignment. Like when we say, I'm going to live in maintenance, it means like I have some flexibility. I'm living in a range. Maybe it's 300 calories. Maybe it's 200 calories. You know, it's different for every person. But it's where I am living at a neutral caloric intake compared to my metabolic exertion. And so I'm not burning more than I'm taking in, and I'm not burning less. I'm staying neutral. Like my calories and my metabolism, they are well balanced and they're neutral. And I can flex my calories as much as I need to, as much as like I am within my maintenance range, and I can live there forever. And that is the glory zone. And you want to be there. And you can hang out there forever. And then if you're like, okay, I'm going to set some new goals and do this, then you can go through the process again. And it is like, but what ends up happening is we feel like our maintenance is down here, right? Like because we can't lose weight. We can't, like nothing is happening. You feel like your metabolism's broken. It's not working for you. It's not broken. It's always working for you. But you feel like you can't get ahead. And it's because we need to get you up to a healthy maintenance range where you're taking in enough calories to support your lifestyle, to where you feel good, your hormones are balanced, you're sleeping well, all of those things, and you're fueling your body with the correct amount of food. And then, and only then, like Emmy said, then we can talk about going into a calorie deficit. But we often hear, like the client that she talked about that we were chatting with earlier today, like, they feel amazing now. She's like, I think I could just stay here forever. And it's like, as a coach, that's exactly what I want to hear. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to write down, like, she feels great at this calorie range, you know, like, let's take note of that when she gets to the point where she's ready to be in maintenance. Like, that's going to be a great place to be. Like, don't we all want to be in that spot where we can have a flexible metabolism? We can eat what we want. We feel great. Our hormones are balanced. Our libido is, you know, working for us. We're sleeping great. We've got lots of energy. You know, all of those things, like, that's what we want for our clients. And ultimately, you know,
I got a little too excited.
Yeah, that was very, very exciting when I started talking about libido again. Anyway, we want that for all of our clients. And I don't know a single person who doesn't want that for themselves. So
it's so true. We've been talking for a long time. We had more we were going to say on metabolic activation. However, for now, like if you find yourself living in a deficit, or you don't feel like you have good balance, or you don't understand how to increase or what you should be eating, any of those things, like,
or maybe you've just been at, you know, maybe you just eat more or less the same amount of calories. Maybe you don't even know how many calories you eat, but you're really struggling to lose weight and you just feel like there's nothing you can do. Like you've done it all and nothing is working anymore. You know, that's where a coach really comes in handy. And we can look at all of the data surrounding you and your lifestyle and give you some ideas on like, okay, well, this is what I think would be beneficial, you know, to get you to your goals.
So head on over to macromavens.life, click the hop on board button. It doesn't commit you to anything, but it does allow one of our coaches to reach out, connect, answer questions, see if we're a good fit. And then if we are, we'll get you started. So also our toolbox on our website has a ton of free resources. So
we're going to wrap it up because Instagram is just having Sorry, Instagram. You guys are just having a hard time today.
So anyways, you guys, we're so thankful to get to be on this journey with so many of you, and the results we're getting are just spectacular. And you don't have to live in a restricted lifestyle. You also, not everybody, we talked a lot about restriction today because we talked about adaptation, but there's so many other examples out there of disordered eating. And so anyways, we would love to help you. If you have questions, please reach out anytime, and we are here for you.
Yep. Have a good week, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.